It's already 5 a.m. Today is July 19, 2014. Let's begin our Hoon Dok Hae by offering one standing bow to our beloved true parents. And Guam, Champumelbe, Yogidape, Humbe, Baro, our most beloved heavenly parents. Today, again, it's Saturday, July the 19th, 2014. We pray for the victory and success of our true parents with our true Father already in the spirit world, and our true Mother here on earth. And we pray as well for the rest of the true family who are in the spiritual world and here in the physical world. We pray for the true children, true grandchildren, and now our elder sister, Sanjanin, one of the true children. He is heading the World Mission Headquarters with her husband in Soknim. We pray for their success always, as we pray also for the World Headquarters based in Korea, with the UPF chairman, Chang Shik-yang, and all the international vice presidents like Reverend Thomas Wang, their families, their staff, and all the continental leaders all over the world. We pray for Archbishop Kim Kim and his family, for North America and the Caribbean. And we pray as well for all the leaders all over the world on our national headquarters of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, especially here in the U.S., United States of America. We pray for our President of our church, Dr. and Reverend Michael Bach, his wife Fumiko, and their children, and his staff there at 4 West Workers Street. We pray always for his success and protection as he goes with the tour, now going to Boston on the 55 holy grounds and 43 days holy ground tour that True Father is also going with. We pray for their safety, we pray for their success, and we pray that more and more good spirits are being directed to the holy ground, and they can really bring all the prayers that we have directly to our true parents. And we pray as well for all the regional leaders, the district leaders, and all the regions all over the world. We pray for District 1, for Director Reverend Ernest and his wife Keiko Patton and their children. Pray for their success always, and we pray as well for all the pastors and leaders all over the world of our centers and churches. We pray for Reverend Akira Ota of Norfolk, Virginia, Reverend or Father Adrian Bayo and his wife Diana San from Richmond. And in Towson, Maryland, we pray for Reverend James Stewart and his wife Anna Kelly. And in the Beltway, we pray for Mr. June for Northern Virginia. And we pray for the pastor of Maryland, Reverend Dylan Stevens, and his wife, and co-pastors like Reverend Boothby and Ms. Jones, and others. And we pray as well for the Washington, D.C. area. We pray for Archbishop Augustus Collins, who heads the ACLC, the American Clergy and Leadership Conference, with Reverend Tom Cox and others. And we pray as well for our pastor, Reverend Zachary Oliver, his wife, Holy Son, and daughter Brianna, and all our members who are connecting right now to the Hoon Dok Hae. We pray for healing today, and unity, and prosperity, and we pray that this weekend would be a nice weekend to invite guests here for the Divine Principle Workshop today. And we pray for each other's success. We pray also for the brothers and sisters who are coming to raise funds to pay for the painting of this other room and the labor. And we pray for its success, and we pray all of this in all our names and in my name. Athanasius Francis, Catalan, blessed our family, our Jew, our Jew, our Jew. Good morning. Reverend Oliver? Yeah, are we now? Yes, we are in Path of Tears, or we're now on the teachings of Sun Myung Moon on page 303.
We're unfinished brutality.
I see.
302.
302, yeah, I'm in 302, where it says number 3, the Path of Tears.
Path of Tears.
So we'll continue right now from other religions, and this is under suffering, yeah.
Path of Tears.
Yes.
Start
Okay.
there.
Yes, thank you for leaving the glasses too. Thank you. Okay. Kisa Gautami had an only son, and he died. In her grief, she carried the dead child to all her neighbors, asking them for medicine. The people said she had lost her senses. The boy is dead. At length, Kisa Gautami met a man who replied to her request. I cannot give you medicine for your child, but I know a physician who can. Go to Sakyamuni, the Buddha. Kisa Gautami repaired to the Buddha and cried, Lord and Master, give me the medicine that will cure my boy. The Buddha answered, I want a handful of mustard seed. And when the girl, in her joy, promised to procure it, the Buddha added, the mustard seed must be taken from a house where no one has lost a child, husband, parent, or friend. Poor Kisa Gautami now went from house to house, and the people pitied her and said, here is the mustard seed, take it. But when she asked, did a son or daughter or father or mother die in your family? They answered, alas, the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief. And there was no house, but some beloved one had died in it. Kisa Gautami became weary and hopeless, and sat down at the wayside, watching the lights of the city as they flickered up and were extinguished again. At last, the darkness of night reigned everywhere, and she considered the fate of men, that their lives flicker up and are extinguished. And she thought to herself, how selfish am I in my grief. Death is common to all, yet in this valley of desolation there is a path that leads him to immortality, who has surrendered all selfishness. Putting away the selfishness of her affection for her child, Kisa Gautami had the dead body buried in the forest. Returning to the Buddha, she took refuge in him and found comfort in the Dharma. And it is from Bhagavagosa, parable of the mustard seed, from Buddhism. And now we have the teachings of our Father, Reverend Son Myung Moon. Adam and Eve, and certainly God, shed tears over their fall. Adam and Eve wept for themselves. God also shed tears, but for whom? The Father of mankind shed tears for her children, his children, who faced expulsion from the Garden of Eden due to their violation of the heavenly law. God wept not for himself, but for his children. Those tears themselves were tragic. Human history began in tears, and for God also. History began with tears. Human beings live in mystery, but so does God. Humans truly deserve to shed tears for their sins, but God does not deserve to shed tears. The history of tears that began with the first human ancestors has expanded down through the generations to all mankind throughout the world. Human history is stained with repeated tears of suffering and struggle and broken-heartedness. People hurt each other and suffer oppression by those above them. No one has been able to put a stop to the tears of history. People ordinarily grieve for their own misfortunes. Nevertheless, more than for ourselves or for our family's misfortunes or our nation's misfortunes, we should grieve for the world's pain. Everyone has been grieving over his or her own misery, or at best over their family's sorrows as their nation's suffering, but what they should focus on is the sorrow of the world. For this, we have to change and reverse the purpose of tears. The tears that God shed when He weeps in sorrow over the situation of humankind. God's eyes were always filled with tears, but His tears are for others, never for Himself. Where can we truly find happiness? First, we should find a way to overcome our own tears. then we should overcome the conditions over which God sheds tears. Then we can find happiness. Why? The history of tears for both God and humans began as a result of the human fall. Therefore, we should return to the time where the fall, when tears were no tears. It is our destiny to go over these two hills of sorrowful tears, human tears and God's tears. Those who are traveling the road of truth should climb these two hills of tears. We should shed tears over the misery of humanity and taste many situations of human suffering, while others may live in blissful ignorance. We should grieve over the problems of human life, from fundamental questions down to the prevailing conditions of society. Some young people in particular agonize about such things. Those who do not have such experiences cannot live a true life. While we overcome our own sorrows, we should also seek ways to alleviate the suffering of the world. Nevertheless, grappling with the suffering and misery of human life is not sufficient to bring a lasting solution. We must go deeper and uproot the fundamental cause of tears. This means reversing the initial tragedy that caused God and human beings to shed tears. Yet, no one could comprehend a method for doing this. The tears we shed for ourselves or for our nations on the human level alone cannot be helpful for reaching the ideal world. They are still within the realm of selfishness, being merely the continuation of the tears that fallen Adam and Eve shed for themselves. Now we're on page 304. What then should we do? We should discover another realm of tears, the tears of God's sorrow. We should deeply experience their taste, then surmount them. Otherwise, we cannot establish the basis for human happiness. This means learning how to shed tears that transcend our own suffering. First, we should discover God and experience His tears. Then, we should willingly walk the path to alleviate God's suffering. And this is from a speech in October 16, 1977. Now the time is still 5:19. We have a new topic, God's grief. If God is our divine parent, we human beings are His children, then surely God must feel great sadness of heart over His children's bondage, degradation, and rebellion. Thus, religious traditions that reverse a personal, compassionate God recognize to have an aspect of sorrow. In Christianity, Jesus' passion has regularly represented the suffering of God, as the Father is one with His Son. Although the biblical witness to God's grief is sometimes eclipsed by the Aristotelian conception that perfection requires that God be impassible, contemporary theologians are confirming that the Creator also suffers. In Mahayana Buddhism, the compassion of Sakyamuni and the commiseration of the Bodhisattvas for human suffering stems from the heart of cosmic Buddha, who is the father of all humanity. For Father Moon, to know God means to experience God's painful and grieving heart, broken at the fall, sorrowful that his children continue to live in darkness, tortured by the power and arrogance of evil that holds his children in thrall, and agonize at the thorny path that his saints must walk as they strive to fulfill the providence and attain liberation. By attaining such knowledge, we can become compassionate ourselves and persevering in the struggle to liberate humanity. And number one, God's grief over the human fall and humankind's sinful condition. This is the first subtopic. The Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him to his heart. And this is from Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6. And it came to pass that God of heaven looked upon the residue of his people, and he wept, and Enoch bore record of it, saying, How is it that the heavens weep, and shed forth their tears as the rain upon the mountains? And Enoch said unto the Lord, How is it that you can weep, seeing you are holy, and from all eternity to all eternity? The Lord said unto Enoch, Behold, these your brethren, they are the workmanship of my own hands, and I gave them their knowledge and commandment, that they should love one another, and that they should choose me, their father. But behold, they are without affection, and they hate their own blood, and the fire of my indignation is kindled against them, and in my hot displeasure will I send in the floods upon them. Misery shall be their doom, and the whole heavens shall weep over them, even all the workmanship of my hands. Therefore should not the heavens weep, seeing these shall suffer. And this is from Pearl of Great Price, Moses, chapter 7, pages or verses 28 to 37 from the Church of the Latter-day Saints, from the Mormons. Abu Dard reported God's messenger as saying, I see what you do not see, and I hear what you do not hear. Heaven has groaned, and it has a right to groan. And this is from the Hadith of Ahmad, Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah from Islam. We're now on page 305. Whatever a great kind of regret I, Chukihi, or God, may have borne until now, I have overlooked it and kept still patiently. Never think of this regret as slight. It is the result of regret that has been accumulated and piled up. All people of the whole world are my children, and although I single-heartedly love them, unaware of this, each and every one of them equally is thinking only of dust. Think of the regret of God over these dusty minds. It is far beyond expressions of my words. And this is from Ufo Disaki, chapter 17, verses 64 to 70, Tin Rikyo. Another religion here. Abuk, mother of Deng, leave your home in the sky and come to work in our homes. Make our country to become clean like the original home of Deng. Come, make our country as one, the country of Akwol. Is not as one, either by night or by day. The child called Deng, his face has become sad. The children of Akwol have bewildered their chief's mind. This is from Dinka song from the African traditional religions. Now we have the teachings of our Father, teachings of our Reverend son Myung Moon. God's heart was torn asunder and broken with indescribable grief and tears the moment Adam and Eve fell. And this was from a speech on October 11, 1959. Love is endless. Had God not established the principle of love, He would be alone, dwelling by Himself. He would be unable to experience joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness. Although God's love is absolute, once God lost His partner of love, He unexpectedly found Himself in an absolutely miserable and grim situation, such as no one in history has ever experienced. No one can comfort Him over this ever. And this is from a speech in July 1, 1990. If Adam and Eve had not fallen, God, their Creator, would have been their eternal Lord. But due to the fall, Satan became their Lord. The fall made this outcome unavoidable. Suppose a girl of noble birth, raised within the walls of her house, is raped by a gangster. To whom does she belong? She belongs to him. The same principle applies. Adam was to have been the king of heaven and Eve his queen. To restore their original positions requires the following the principles of creation. From the beginning of creation, God laid down the law of eternal love to be fulfilled by Adam and Eve. So it has to be observed. Were God to disregard this law, it would be tantamount to destroying the law of heaven. God set up this heavenly law, and if He were to negate it, that would be tantamount to negating humankind and to negating Himself as the absolute Creator. That is why God had no alternative but to bring order through a course of recreation. Who has known its long and painful history? And this is from a speech on November 11, 1990. How grieved was God that His enemy deprived Him of His throne. Unable to become the glorious God, He became the long-suffering and sorrowful God. Although he is rightfully the king of his kingdom and the king of the universe, God has been mistreated as he were dead. His enemy robbed him of his ideal and violated his beloved children. The planet Earth has fully become his enemy's plaything. And this is from a speech on October 21, 1979. We have 3 more paragraphs for another subtopic. We're now on page 306. Why is God's heart full of grief? It is because of Satan. It is because human beings planted Satan's blood and flesh through partaking of his false love. It is because they sowed the devil's seeds, which propagated as the devil's families. God wished to rejoice, singing, "May my families live with true love for 10,000 years under the heaven's dominion." However, with the appearance of the devil's family lies multiplying throughout the world, God's dream were shattered. And this is from a speech on February 3rd, 1991. Can you imagine how much it breaks God's heart to observe human misery every hour of every day? What happened to God's dignity when his sons and daughters, whom he intended to glorify as princes and princesses, became cripples, fell into a pit filled with dung, and were stuck upside down in hell? What became of the dignity of the omniscient and omnipotent God, of the absolute God? Can he show his face? This is from a speech in August 19, 1991. Last paragraph. As long as human beings live in despair, God also lives in despair. As long as Satan shackles human beings on earth, the world of darkness under his dominion will remain also in the spirit world. And this is from a speech on June 9, 1957. Now it's already 5:33. Tomorrow we'll read the subtopic, God's painful struggle to save humankind. So is there anybody who wants to share about our reading today, God's grief, a new topic, and the subtopic before that, the path of tears? Anyone who wants to share about this reading?
Good morning, Diane.
Yes, good morning, Diane.
Yes, have we realized that continuously the idea of God grieving and God leading us in some way to our divine principle, faith and belief. And this is a continual realization that parents, God, on other sides are grieving in need of restoration of mental to all the fulfilled.
Yes, thank you, Diane. Yes. For me, before the movement, I thought of God as an all-powerful God who's sitting on the throne, and he gives commands and even intercede for human beings. But when I met the movement and learned about the divine principle, you're right. People should know about it, that God is grieving because he lost his, not only all things, but his children. And they are also like, they were fathered by his enemy, Satan. And as we have read also today, the example of a princess was being raised in, the protection of the household, and is being raped by a gangster. So to whom does she belong? So he doesn't belong to the household anymore, but to the gangster. So it's a similar situation to God's children. So how pitiful it is. And God gives us hope even today that we should go back to that time where we can overcome the growth stage, where we can recreate ourselves and many other people, so that they can get a blessing from God. And then, of course, God should rejoice that, for 10,000 years under heaven, may my families live with true love for 10,000 years under heaven's dominion, like Ogman say, 10,000 years of prosperity. But of course, you cannot rejoice after the fall. But now, gradually, from the east, He is carving out little by little until all this world or the earth will be filled with blessed families, where they know nothing about the fall, and they will really rejoice with God, for 10,000 years or more. So anybody else? Anyone from the teleconference who wants to share or is being inspired by our readings today?
Good morning.
Good morning, Reverend Oliver.
Just briefly, I think you really understand what Father is saying was the reading yesterday. And Father's interpretation, or that'll
Yes, Reverend Oliver. I think we lost him. Are you still there? I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend Hoon Dok Hae yesterday because I drove from New York from 11 until 3 a.m. and we reached the church before 4 a.m. Yeah. So I thought I just...
Did you attend the Holy Ground
Yes, I
tour
did.
part in New York?
Yeah, not only New York, but also we went to East Garden to bring the bag of Buson, the son of Reverend Ezra, because we missed him in Central Park and in the New Yorker Hotel. So I think God is pulling us there. We went to East Garden, the holy ground there where Father prayed, before the court case. And it's so moving, and we didn't even take pictures there. We were advised, but I took, of course, some, but before we were told, there's a holy place. There was like a bench where Father sits, and he goes there in in the morning or in the dead of the night, only having a blanket, no cap, and it was snowing. He has just a blanket over him, no coat, you know. And goes there from the house in East Garden. So just how he went to that holy ground and prayed and maybe reflect about the world. And then of course he goes there almost every time when he comes back from trips abroad. And then he goes at early morning. And then I saw Father's dining area with a Japanese garden, with a pool where there's a pond, where there are still fish there, and small falls, and they're covered with glass, which is like a greenhouse, so everything is still thriving there. So it was a nice experience, and we went to Belvedere also looking for the bus. We didn't find it there until we go to East Garden. So Reverend Oliver is back?
Yeah, my phone died.
Yes.
Just briefly, I was just saying that the previous topic,
yes,
the futility of man, also suffering. Each one had a different spin on suffering. That, when you read about princess becoming being raped by
gangster, yes,
an animal,
mm-hmm.
and losing her position and becoming owned by him. But the origin of suffering is that our history is the history of being raped and being disowned or losing our ownership and being owned by a process of evil. Therefore, she didn't have the opportunity to be made with the standard of heaven, but only the standard of evil. And therefore, although sometimes you might not know better, but the outcome is always finally evil and unhappiness, and which the result is suffering, and all of it is centered on the vanity, the evil, the history of evil began centered on not on the mind or on heaven, centered on the physical body, physical the flesh, and therefore, when we center on that, even if we are extremely successful, the result is still unhappy. And when you're unhappy, you suffer.
Mm.
And we get the reason why God created us. Even though evil took ownership of us, and we have conditioned ourselves to delight in what is evil, but our suffering still will emerge because we, as the other religious organization, I don't know, well, got the name of it, mentioned that we're all children of God, and God created us all. Therefore, there's an aspect of God in us, and an
So if man is in despair, also God is in despair. So,
Thank you, that's it.
yes, thank you, Reverend Walker. Anybody else wants to share about our readings today? So if there's none, let's all rise and have unison prayer. Our most beloved Heavenly Parents, we're so thankful for this reading today about God's suffering and the subtopic, the path of tears. We know that your path of tears is indescribable, even greater than this lady who's trying to get medicine for his boy is already dead. We pray that we won't be so much selfish as this lady was trying to ask, even after the Buddha told her if there was somebody who, a daughter or any person that was not dead or any family, and she cannot find that a family that doesn't have any dead, so that there are many more dead persons than living persons here on earth. We pray for our human ancestors going back to Adam and Eve, that they will be restored, they will be liberated, and they will get the blessing. We pray we can make as many conditions as we can here on this earth to liberate them and give them the blessing, and also solve their problems as well as ours. We pray that we can also restore ourselves and really keep this blessing and keep our purity in mind and body. And we're so thankful. We thank you, our Heavenly Parents, for giving us this opportunity every day here in Hoon Dok Hae to be fed by your words and guidance and even protection, and even from other religions that you have sought and really cared for. We pray, our Heavenly Parents, that more and more people around the world would honor you as our true parents, as they learn about you with our true mother here, working so hard to bring about a world that is an ideal world where God can dwell in each family, in each society and nation in this world. We pray for the unity, the success of everyone, and even healing as we correct many habits that we have. We pray for each other's success. We pray for all our friends and relatives who are suffering, and even ourselves who are suffering. We pray that God would lift this yoke upon our shoulders, and we pray all of this in all our names and in my name. Athanasius Francis, say Catalan, blessed of the family, Arju, Arju, Arju. Uri solen tong il, numero solen tong il, imo sambacioso tong il io Good morning to you, our beloved true parents of heaven and earth and humankind. Good morning to the true children, the true grandchildren, and all our brothers and sisters. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Reverend Oliver, Dianne, all brothers and sisters. Have a nice weekend. Today there will be thunderstorms, so it will be sunny in the afternoon. Have a great day.
Thank you. You also.
Yes, yeah, bye-bye. You're welcome.